In Dalton, Illinois, political drama is hardly a new phenomenon, but the recent events surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard have taken the town's dysfunction to unprecedented levels. Known for her contentious leadership style and ongoing clashes with the village trustees, Henyard has long been a divisive figure. However, what unfolded at the latest village board meeting pushed tensions to their breaking point, creating a spectacle that felt more akin to a reality TV drama than a political meeting originally scheduled to take place at Village Hall. The meeting was moved to the local Park District building to accommodate the growing crowd of concerned residents eager to witness the latest clash between Henyard and the trustees. The already tense relationship between the mayor and the trustees had been escalating for months, driven by disagreements over appointments, policy decisions, and general governance. But this particular meeting quickly spiraled out of control, reaching a level of chaos that no one had expected as soon as the meeting began. Henyard wasted no time disregarding the usual rules and procedures. She delivered a dramatic, almost theatrical performance, attempting to assert her dominance over proceedings. It became clear almost immediately that she was more interested in making a statement and asserting control than in conducting the business of the village. Her actions quickly escalated, turning what should have been a routine meeting into a full-fledged spectacle. The live broadcast of the meeting had to be cut off abruptly, leaving both the people in the room and those watching from home in complete shock. Instead of focusing on the pressing matters of the town, Henyard appeared more concerned with playing to crowd, using the event to amplify her own power rather than addressing the town's needs. This disregard for the governance process only deepened public doubts about her ability to lead effectively. Henyard's behavior during the meeting painted a stark picture of a mayor more focused on drama than on running the town. The spectacle left many wondering if Dalton could ever recover from the political turmoil she had created. While some residents had come to the meeting with genuine concerns about the state of the town, many were drawn in by the unpredictability of Henyard's actions. Her desire for attention and control overshadowed any real effort to solve the town's problems. The meeting, which was supposed to focus on important issues facing Dalton, was hijacked by the mayor's erratic behavior. As the meeting descended further into chaos, it became increasingly clear that Henyard was more interested in creating a spectacle than in governing. This only served to erode her credibility, leaving residents questioning whether Dalton could ever move beyond the dysfunction she had fostered. The tension between Henyard and the trustees had been building for months, but no one expected the meeting to spiral out of control in such a dramatic fashion. At the heart of the crisis were questionable expenditures made by the mayor, which had already sparked outrage among residents and further fueled the discontent in the room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and everyone in attendance could sense that something significant was about to unfold. Unfortunately, instead of addressing the town's financial concerns, the meeting turned into a political circus. Henyard's leadership style took center stage, overshadowing any meaningful discussion about Dalton's future. Her refusal to follow basic meeting protocols and engage in meaningful dialogue only deepened the sense of chaos. The political landscape in Dalton seemed to be increasingly defined by dysfunction rather than progress as the meeting spiraled further out of control. The question of Henyard's fitness to serve as mayor became more pressing. Her erratic behavior cast serious doubts on her ability to govern effectively, leaving the community to wonder whether Dalton would ever recover from the crisis she had orchestrated. Her refusal to follow meeting protocols, coupled with her lack of engagement in solving the town's issues, painted a bleak picture for Dalton's future. The increasingly dramatic nature of these meetings, combined with Henyard's refusal to collaborate with the trustees or address the concerns of the community, made it clear that her leadership was only deepening the crisis in Dalton. Her actions were not only alienating the trustees, but also the very residents she was supposed to serve. The town was becoming more defined by chaos than by any sense of governance or stability. In a bold and controversial move, Henyard called her own meeting at Village Hall, completely disregarding the previously scheduled session at the Park District building. It appeared that she was trying to reassert her dominance, reminding everyone that she was still in control. However, her plan quickly backfired. Only 2 trustees attended her impromptu gathering, far from the quorum needed to hold a legal meeting. Humiliated by this failure, Henyard refused to back down and stormed out her session, driving directly to the Park District building where the trustees were continuing their meeting. Without her, what followed was a dramatic confrontation that further fueled the public spectacle. Henyard barged into the meeting, interrupting proceedings and attempting to steal the spotlight. Her sudden appearance immediately set the room on edge, and tensions flared as she blatantly refused to follow the rules or recognize the authority of the board. Her infamous declaration, "I am the mayor of the village of Dalton," only fueled the growing resentment from both the trustees and the audience. The crowd's reaction was unmistakable. Many attendees visibly turned away from Henyard, signaling their disapproval in a glaring show of contempt. The situation had escalated far beyond a simple political disagreement. It had become a public spectacle that exposed the deepening divide within Dalton's political landscape. Rather than reinforcing her authority, Henyard's actions alienated her further from both the trustees and the residents, cementing the perception that she was more interested in power struggles and public spectacle than in effectively governing the town. Things took a turn for the worse when a temporary restraining order was imposed on Henyard, prohibiting her from making certain appointments without the board's approval. This legal move further isolated her from the very government she was supposed to lead, adding fuel to the fire of political turmoil. The rift between Henyard and the village trustees deepened, and many residents began to question whether the town could ever recover from the dysfunction that had become synonymous with her leadership as the political chaos continued to unfold. It was clear that Henyard's leadership style was not only undermining the trust of the trustees, but also alienating her from the very community she was meant to serve. What was once a peaceful village was now defined by conflict, dysfunction, and instability. With each dramatic public outburst and controversial decision, Henyard's grip on the town loosened, and Dalton's future became more uncertain by the day. The question on everyone's mind was whether Dalton could recover from this crisis. Could the village ever move past the chaos that Henyard's leadership had generated, or would it continue to be defined by turmoil and dysfunction for the foreseeable future as the public's frustration with Henyard mounted? It seemed increasingly unlikely that she would be able to restore any sense of order or stability to Dalton's political landscape. The meeting at the Park District building marked a turning point. It became clear that Henyard's behavior was deepening the crisis and further alienating her from the community. The once promising future of Dalton now seemed clouded by the political chaos she had orchestrated. Only time would tell whether the town could ever move beyond the dysfunction she created, or whether it would remain stuck in a never-ending cycle of political drama. The political crisis in Dalton, Illinois reached a dramatic climax when Mayor Tiffany Henyard's actions during a village board meeting spiraled into uncontrollable chaos. Known for her divisive leadership style and frequent clashes with the village trustees, Henyard had long been a polarizing figure in the town. However, what should have been a routine meeting quickly became an explosive spectacle, marking the end of her controversial tenure. The meeting, initially set to take place at Village Hall, had been moved to the local Park District building to accommodate the growing number of concerned residents. These citizens had come not only to address pressing town issues, but also to witness the latest round of Henyard's ongoing conflicts with the trustees. What began as a standard meeting quickly turned into a public battle, with Henyard at the center, attempting to assert her authority in a room increasingly hostile to her leadership. As soon as the meeting began, Henyard disregarded established rules and procedures, delivering a dramatic performance meant to assert control rather than resolve any of the town's pressing issues. The frustration of the crowd grew palpable, as Henyard's focus seemed more on creating political theater than addressing the needs of the community. Residents who had once been hopeful about her leadership were now disillusioned, growing increasingly frustrated with her inability to foster cooperation or resolve the ongoing problems facing the town. What should have been a simple discussion about Dalton's future quickly devolved into yet another chapter of the town's political saga. Henyard's failure to engage in meaningful dialogue only deepened the divide between her and the trustees, leaving the community to wonder if Dalton could ever move beyond the chaos she had fostered. Her actions exacerbated the crisis, creating a toxic atmosphere that further alienated residents and elected officials alike. The situation worsened when a temporary restraining order was imposed on Henyard, prohibiting her from making certain appointments without the board's approval. This legal action underscored the growing rift between the mayor and the government she was supposed to lead, highlighting her inability to govern effectively. The tensions escalated when Henyard attempted to push through critical appointments, including naming a new police chief, only for her words to be drowned out by the increasingly hostile crowd. As Henyard struggled to maintain composure, the room became a battleground. Her desperate attempt to declare the meeting illegal in an effort to regain control only added fuel to fire. Witnesses described the scene as total pandemonium, with Henyard's attempt to dominate the proceedings overwhelmed by the public's loud, visceral opposition. Within minutes, she was forced to leave the room, marking a humiliating exit as the very people she was supposed to serve booed her out. The chaos reached a new level when Henyard stormed out of the building, visibly angry at the crowd's rejection. Police officers, who had been stationed nearby in anticipation of potential trouble, quickly intervened to restore order. Rumors began circulating that Henyard, enraged by the public humiliation, had gotten physical with one of the officials present. Whether or not those rumors were true, the situation continued to spiral out of control. With the meeting collapsing into complete disarray, the crisis reached its shocking apex when Henyard was arrested, marking the culmination of the meeting's dramatic unraveling. The arrest only solidified Henyard's role in Dalton's long-standing political turmoil. What had once been hopeful promises of leadership under Henyard had now been replaced by a community torn apart by conflict, distrust, and dysfunction. Her arrest was a direct result of the chaos she had incited, demonstrating just how far Dalton's political situation had deteriorated under her leadership. Henyard's fall from grace was swift and public, with her leadership ambitions dashed by her erratic behavior. The once powerful mayor, who had built her career on defiance, now found herself facing the harsh reality of her actions. The political chaos she had instigated had alienated her constituents, fractured her leadership, and incited public outrage. The fallout from her arrest left the community reeling, serving as a stark reminder of the deep divisions that had come to define her tenure. As Henyard was escorted out of the meeting in handcuffs, the community watched in shock. The mayor, once seen as an untouchable leader, was now deflated and humiliated. The political landscape of Dalton had shifted dramatically, and the damage Henyard's leadership had caused seemed impossible to undo. The town, which had once been hopeful for progress under her guidance, was now left to confront the fallout of its fractured government. In the wake of Henyard's arrest, the future of Dalton seemed uncertain. The public spectacle of the mayor's downfall left many residents wondering whether the town could ever recover from the deep wounds inflicted by her leadership. The chaos surrounding her leadership was no longer just a local issue. It played out on a much larger stage, drawing attention from outside the community. Henyard's inability to govern effectively had led to her ultimate downfall, and the town was left to wonder if they could ever move beyond the dysfunction she had created. As the community struggled to come to terms with the event of that day, the political chaos seemed far from over. Henyard's arrest marked a significant turning point in Dalton's history, but the aftermath of her leadership was far from resolved. The town would have to rebuild, but the question remained whether they could ever restore the trust and cooperation that had been lost under Henyard's reign. The once promising leadership of Henyard had now become a distant memory, overshadowed by the spectacle of her arrest and the political dysfunction that had defined her time in office. The arrest itself, along with the chaos that preceded it, cemented Henyard's place in Dalton's political history as a deeply divisive and controversial figure. The community's ability to move forward would depend on whether they could heal the divisions Henyard had created and restore a sense of unity and purpose to their government in the end. The political crisis in Dalton had reached a shocking climax, leaving the town grappling with the aftermath of Henyard's tumultuous tenure. The question on everyone's mind was whether Dalton could recover from the damage done under her leadership, or the scars of her time in office would linger, defining the town for years to come. The political crisis in Dalton, Illinois, reached a boiling point when Mayor Tiffany Henyard's increasingly erratic behavior, financial mismanagement, and defiance of established local governance procedures led to a dramatic downfall that stunned the community. This moment was not an isolated event, but the culmination of months, if not years, of growing tension, dysfunction, and defiance under Henyard's leadership. Her tenure, from the very beginning, had been marked by controversy, pushing boundaries, and disregarding the basic principles of effective governance. The consequences of her actions would reverberate for years, leaving the future of Dalton uncertain. Henyard's leadership was always marked by a confrontational approach, a disregard for the established rules, and an inclination to push her own agenda over collaboration. From her first days in office, she stirred controversy by publicly challenging the authority of the village trustees and frequently making decisions without consulting them. While Dalton residents had hoped for a strong leader who could guide the town into a new era, what they got instead was a mayor who prioritized her own interests and made a spectacle of governance. The tension between Henyard and the village trustees quickly grew as she undermined their authority and pushed forward with decisions that were increasingly seen as reckless. One of Henyard's most significant missteps was her consistent defiance of local government procedures, particularly with respect to key appointments. Appointments like naming a new police chief or village attorney were traditionally made in collaboration with the Board of Trustees. However, Henyard's refusal to follow these norms sparked increasing outrage. She bypassed the established procedures and began making decisions on her own, which alienated not only her political opponents, but also her supporters. It became evident that she was more interested in asserting control over Dalton's future than in working cooperatively with the elected representatives of the town. Her actions were not without consequence. As Henyard pressed forward with controversial appointments and policies, tensions within the village government reached unprecedented levels. The situation worsened when it became clear that Henyard was unwilling to collaborate, creating a toxic environment of division and dysfunction. Residents who had once hoped for a leader who could unify the town were left disillusioned by Henyard's erratic behavior and refusal to engage in constructive dialogue. Instead of resolving the town's challenges, Henyard seemed to thrive on the chaos her leadership generated, pushing Dalton further into political turmoil. By the time of the fateful village board meeting, Henyard's political capital had completely eroded. What should have been a routine meeting to discuss important local issues quickly turned into a public spectacle. Henyard attempted to push through critical appointments, including naming a new police chief, despite widespread resistance. The public's anger was palpable, and the room quickly filled with frustration and hostility toward the mayor. The audience refused to listen to her, rejecting her authority, which only isolated Henyard further. The meeting that began with the usual political tensions quickly escalated into full-blown chaos. Henyard's failure to regain control of the proceedings highlighted the unraveling of her leadership in a dramatic turn of events. Henyard was escorted away in handcuffs, marking the definitive end of her political reign. The arrest was a dramatic turning point that signified the failure of Henyard's leadership, the collapse of her political power, and the deepening divisions within the town. Her defiance of the legal framework, combined with her inability to govern effectively, had left Dalton in a state of complete disarray. It was clear that Henyard's political career had reached its breaking point. The question for Dalton now was whether the town could recover from the chaos Henyard had caused, and whether new leadership would emerge to restore order and rebuild trust. Henyard's tenure had been a whirlwind of scandal and controversy. The mayor's defiance of governance procedures, her attempt to bypass the village board, and her insistence on making key appointments unilaterally created an environment of dysfunction that undermined the entire political system. As tensions mounted, rumors of financial mismanagement began to surface. Allegations of Henyard's misuse of taxpayer funds, particularly related to extravagant and questionable spending on travel, further tainted her reputation. These rumors began to tarnish the image of a leader who had once presented herself as a champion of change despite the mounting allegations. Henyard remained defiant. She dismissed accusations of financial misconduct as part of a coordinated smear campaign aimed at undermining her authority. However, as leaked documents and reports began to surface, the claims became harder to dismiss. Thousands of dollars of taxpayer money were allegedly spent on lavish travel and accommodations with no clear justification. These expenses were particularly concerning given Dalton's financial struggles. The growing perception that Henyard had prioritized her personal interests over the welfare of the town created a deep sense of betrayal among residents. The fact that these expenditures were allegedly funded by taxpayer dollars only intensified the outrage as the allegations continued to swirl. Legal pressures mounted. Federal and state agencies, including the FBI, began investigating Henyard's financial dealings, signaling that Dalton's political crisis had escalated into a full-blown scandal. Henyard's refusal to address the mounting concerns, coupled with her combative rhetoric and continued defiance of authority, only deepened the divide within the town. What had once been a community with a shared vision of progress was now fractured along political lines. With Henyard's behavior turning supporters into skeptics and opponents into vocal critics, Henyard's response to the growing legal and political pressure was to cast herself as a victim of a corrupt system. On social media, she framed herself as a hero standing up against an establishment that was conspiring to bring her down. While this rhetoric resonated with a small base of vocal supporters, it only alienated others who might have been willing to rally behind her. The mayor's siege mentality portrayed herself as an outsider battling a corrupt political system, further distanced her from the broader community. Her defiant stance only pushed Dalton deeper into turmoil, making it increasingly unlikely that any resolution could be reached under her leadership. The situation took another dramatic turn when Henyard, unable to convene a legally authorized meeting due to a lack of quorum, stormed into a village trustee meeting at the Park District building. She barged into the room uninvited, disregarded the procedures, and attempted to take control of the proceedings. Her entrance was met with loud boos, shouts, and even thrown objects, signaling the depth of the community's frustration. Henyard's insistence on making key decisions, including appointing a new police chief, without following the proper legal procedures, only aggravated the already tense atmosphere. The trustees, who had long been at odds with Henyard, were now openly exasperated by her antics. The crowd's reaction was a clear indication that Henyard's leadership had become untenable. What should have been a routine meeting to address critical town issues quickly devolved into an uncontrollable spectacle. Henyard's inability to work with others was on full display, and the community was left grappling with the consequences of her divisive behavior. The town's political system was in tatters, and Dalton was now facing a leadership vacuum. The culmination of Henyard's defiance came when she was arrested at the meeting. The arrest marked the end of her political career, and further solidified the perception that she was incapable of governing effectively. It was a humiliating moment, and as Henyard was escorted out of the meeting in handcuffs, the community watched in disbelief. The once powerful mayor who had made a career of defiance was now a figure of ridicule and failure. In the wake of Henyard's arrest, Dalton was left to pick up the pieces of its fractured governance. The town was now deeply divided, and residents were left wondering how, or even if, the town could recover from the chaos that Henyard had caused. Her reign of defiance had left deep scars, and the political system she had disrupted was in need of urgent repair. The future of Dalton seemed uncertain as the town's leaders scrambled to find a way forward despite Henyard's insistence that she was fighting for people. Her actions had only pushed Dalton further into chaos. The increasing evidence of her financial mismanagement, the public spectacle of her arrest, and the growing resentment from residents and trustees alike made it difficult to see how she could regain any semblance of authority. With each new revelation, Henyard's credibility continued to erode, and the mounting legal pressure seemed poised to bring her downfall. As Henyard's political career spiraled toward an inevitable end, Dalton's future remained uncertain. The town now faced the challenge of rebuilding its governance, repairing the deep divisions that Henyard had exacerbated, and restoring trust in local leadership. Whether Dalton could recover from the damage caused by Henyard's divisive leadership was still an open question, but one thing was certain. The political saga of Tiffany Henyard had left an indelible mark on the town, and the fallout from her actions would be felt for years to come.